Hi, I'm Lisa Tyler, host of Senior Connections. This program is a service of Senior Resources, your local area agency on aging. We are here every month trying to bring you some information and resources about things that are of interest to older adults and their families and friends. We're here to help navigate what can be sometimes a very confusing network of services and programs, and we are trying to help you and your loved ones figure out your way around that aging network. So today we are going to talk about Alzheimer's disease, not something we want to think about, but something we need to think about. And I'm very pleased to welcome my guest, Sarah Hicks from our local Alzheimer's Association chapter. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Glad to have you here. So why don't you tell our viewers and remind me your role at Alzheimer's Association?
Well, I am the program coordinator for the West Shore region of the Alzheimer's Association, and I handle programs, support groups, care consultations, any kind of care planning that goes on in Muskegon, Newaygo, Lake, Mason, and Oceana counties.
Wide area.
Yes, a very wide area.
So you're traveling a bit.
Yes, I spend a lot of time on the road, yes.
And how long have you been with Alzheimer's Association?
I have been with them almost, it'll be a year and a half in December, so
okay.
Yep, just over a year.
Great.
Mark.
Where is there a physical location for the local office or regional, since it's a big region?
There is our physical location is actually inside the sanctuary at the Oaks building.
Okay.
It's on the 3rd floor at Suite 336.
Okay. Is that some place that is manned frequently? People can walk in, or generally are they calling and making appointments?
We prefer that somebody calls to make an appointment, just because I do cover such a wide range.
Because you just listed about 8 counties.
Yeah, and I'm in and out frequently, but we try to have at least one day a week where somebody's in the office, say on a Wednesday or a Thursday, so somebody can drop in and have a conversation then too.
Great. So let's talk some more about Alzheimer's specifically. You hear people talk about it, and they call it old timers, and I think people tend to just think dementia equals Alzheimer's, and that's not true, right? We've got millions of Americans living with actual diagnosis of Alzheimer's, correct?
Yes, yep.
Has that number changed over the years? Talk to us a little bit about that.
The number has gone up in recent years. Unfortunately, it's going to continue to go up. The projected numbers actually right now in the United States, they're counting about 5.2 million people who have been diagnosed with Alzheimer's alone, which, as you mentioned, is just a form of dementia. Dementia is kind of the umbrella term. It would be like if you said, I have cancer, and then you specified pancreatic, and Alzheimer's would be that subset.
Okay.
Now, by the mid-century, by 2050, they're projecting that number is going to go from 5.2 million to 13.8 million.
More than double.
Yes,
Wow.
as the baby boomer generation ages, is what they're looking at. So it's a steady incline, and it's something we're fighting hard to at least keep at bay and try to reverse that incline.
Now, I read somewhere recently that somebody, and we're talking United States, obviously it's a worldwide problem, but we're concerned about the United States, that someone in the U.S. develops Alzheimer's every 66 seconds, so roughly every minute. Although probably most of the time, that's not known for a long time, because you can develop Alzheimer's, and it could take years for it to manifest into symptoms that are recognizable, I imagine.
Yes, that's very true. With Alzheimer's disease, frequently we see people who have had some kind of impairment for years. When you look back after they've been diagnosed and you say, oh, well, that actually was a sign. This was a sign as well. This was boy, he's had that for 4 or 5 years, kind of a thing. It's almost like a retroactive. You notice it well after it's been diagnosed.
Hindsight 2020
yes,
stuff.
Yes, exactly.
So what exactly is Alzheimer's, and how is it different than other kinds of dementia?
Well, Alzheimer's disease is a degenerative brain disease, and what happens with Alzheimer's disease is there's a buildup of unhealthy proteins in the brain called plaques and tangles, and what those essentially do is they kind of sort of strangle your neurons. So the things that connect your memories and allow you to think and problem solve and that sort of thing are the neurons and function, and when those connections are lost, with Alzheimer's disease, you can't produce more connections. And so eventually it kind of makes you unable to think and unable to process. And it begins with the memories in the front of the brain, and it eventually wraps around and goes to the brainstem, which is what controls things like breathing, moving, eating, that sort of thing, to all of your things that you don't actually think about that your body does for you.
Okay. So you can actually die of Alzheimer's then, because it isn't just the memory loss that which is what most of us think of. Because I think I remember, and I could be wrong in my memory, but it seems like I remember years ago, like a few decades ago, hearing maybe the opposite. You'd have Alzheimer's, but you didn't really die of Alzheimer's. But you clearly can then if
You
it
can,
gets
yes.
to that developmental
And
point.
frequently what will happen is somebody will get pneumonia or another opportunistic infection, and that will be the cause of death with Alzheimer's because the immune system doesn't know how to fight things off anymore. But you can, if you're a healthy individual and you've been healthy your whole life and Alzheimer's is your first and only problem, you can actually die from that. Yep.
So what are some of the signs, the common signs, and maybe not so common signs that show that it's Alzheimer's? Obviously, you need to have a medical diagnosis. It's not like I can say, oh, Grandma is doing this, 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 and this. She has Alzheimer's. She'd have to go to a doctor. But what are they looking for?
Things that you're going to want to be looking for are the biggest thing I tell people when they're looking at diagnosis or if they're saying signs is it has to be a change within that person. So with any of the 10 signs that I'm about to tell you about, there has to be a change. So if somebody's always been terrible with names and they're still terrible with names, that's not necessarily a sign of Alzheimer's disease. Now if it's somebody that's known everybody they've ever met by their name right after they met them, and then all of a sudden they completely forget who most of the people are, that is a sign that you might want to get something looked at, something checked. And so with that said, the sign that we notice is memory changes disrupting daily life. That's probably the biggest and the first one you'll notice. So someone who may not have ever used a to-do list, you somehow see a lot of Post-it notes everywhere in the house and remembering that kind of thing. Or they forget where they're going, they forget who you are, that kind of a thing.
Or they're forgetting something they've always done. They've always brushed their teeth 3 times a day, and now they're not remembering to do it at all.
Or they go down to the coffee, or go down to the kitchen and have coffee first thing in the morning, and they go down to the kitchen and they forget why they're there. And they've done this for 60 years, and that's been their first routine. So that's the biggest thing that you'll see.
That's probably what most people notice.
Yep, and I think that's one of the bigger hindsight ones as well, when you look back and you say, wow, that really was a sign of something bigger.
So the fact that I always, have for years, forgotten what I went into a room for.
No,
and I've done that since my 40s. I shouldn't be, or my 30s probably. I shouldn't. Pretty much since I've had kids.
Yes.
But when they sucked the brain cells out of my brain, I shouldn't worry that unless I'm forgetting who they are.
Right, yeah, and that's we have people ask that question frequently, you know, because one of the signs is misplacing things and not being able to find them later.
But if you've always done that.
I mean, I lose my keys probably once a week, but I'm able to retrace my steps and find them. With Alzheimer's, you might lose your keys, and after a week, you go get a new set of keys because and then you find them later in the sock drawer or the refrigerator or something like that, where it doesn't make logical sense and you weren't going to be able to find them again. So that's kind of the...
All right, so let's go through the others.
So the second one is challenges in planning and problem solving, and that again is looks like someone who's always balanced the checkbook, sitting down and not being able to balance the checkbook. The third is difficulty with familiar tasks. So we frequently see people who, if the person was an avid baker, somehow the recipes taste weird. They've been putting salt in instead of sugar, something like that with a confusion. Fourth is confusing time or place, and that, once again, I forget what day of the week it is after a long holiday weekend, but this is probably someone who can't really, they realize they've forgotten what's going on and what day and time and place it is, but they're not able to figure it out. It's not something that comes back to them. 5 is trouble understanding visual images or spatial relationships. So we see that more with people who are driving and they get to some fender benders and they've not been somebody who does that before, or they hit a curb or something, they can't parallel park anymore. Then we have new problems with word misspelling or writing. Someone who uses a lot of big words, different words for different things, will somehow change into using the same word over and over and over because they remember that one particular word. They can't find the others. They're struggling for those. Misplacing things unable to retrace steps. We talked about that a little bit. It could be your car keys. It could be, you know, the garage door opener. It could be cell phone, anything like that. And the key there is not being able to find them again, not being able to retrace and solve the problem. Decreased or poor judgment is also one. With that, we see, I mean, typical aging, you do end up forgetting things. We end up, maybe I shouldn't have spent that extra whatever on dinner last night. This probably looks more like someone who perhaps is doing a lot of home shopping and they just have boxes sitting around their house because they haven't opened it, or someone who, when phone scammers calls, immediately gives over the credit card information over and over. Withdrawal from work or social activities, somebody who, and this is not always a good sign for some people because some people have always been kind of shy and reserved. But for those people who have been very outgoing, they'll start to pull back, stop talking with people about various things, and that kind of stay in their own. And the last one is changes in mood and personality. And people usually think of that being somebody who is very happy-go-lucky, becoming very agitated, but it can also go the other way. So if somebody was very not affectionate, very angry about things, they become more affectionate, they become more easygoing, and let things go faster.
Okay, great. So are there risk factors for people who are more likely to get Alzheimer's?
The biggest risk factor is going to be age still. They're still working on developing actual reasons why this will lead to Alzheimer's disease. Age is the biggest one, and your risks go way up when you hit 85, actually. The number gets, I believe it doubles at 85.
Oh, wow.
But also what we want to remember with Alzheimer's disease is that anything that's healthy for your heart and your body is healthy for your brain. So the healthier you are and the more you can keep blood flowing to the brain, the better off you're going to be, but that's not always a foolproof either.
So generally, eating well, exercising, sleeping, not smoking, the things that for general health are good for our brain as well.
Getting even 30 minutes of activity a day, that also they're showing that has great results for people who even have Alzheimer's disease. In the early stages, that helps.
At bay a little bit.
Exactly. And so for any type of physical, even just cutting out a little bit of the heart unhealthy foods, the trans fats, that sort of thing will help long-term brain health.
Okay. How is it diagnosed then? So it's by a medical professional, but what do they do to say, yes, this is? Is there a test you do? Are they doing a brain scan?
Typically what they will start with if you go to a primary care doctor is they will ideally start you with a mini mental status exam, which is one of those tests where they kind of ask you, sometimes they give you a clock with a blank face, and they'll ask you to put the letters or the numbers on the clock and see that type of thing and remember 5 words and repeat them back later. That's just kind of a general screening. And then eventually what they will ideally do for you is, in Muskegon, for example, we have a memory clinic. So they refer you to a specialist, maybe in Grand Rapids, maybe in Muskegon, maybe somewhere like that, who will go through more rigorous testing, and there is also brain scanning involved in that too, because the only conclusive way to prove it is actually by taking a tissue of the brain sample post-mortem. But the brain scans are what you would use now to get a diagnosis of Alzheimer's, an actual correct diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease that way.
All right. So we talked a little bit about the health things you can do to kind of keep it at bay or maybe slow its progression. Are there any medications that are effective? What kind of treatments are there? There's not a cure yet, sadly.
Right.
We would love for there to be a cure. Hopefully we get there. But what kind of treatments are there that can slow it, or I don't know.
What we have right now, unfortunately, the 2 most common drug names you hear are Aricept and Namenda, and those are from 2 different branches those are pretty much what we have. Those are kind of what we have so far. There are more in testing right now, but they haven't been approved. And those drugs, typically, they want to start you on those in the front end of things because they show more of a effect when they're begun right off the get-go, because they kind of tend to stabilize. And some people see a little bit of a slowing in the progression of Alzheimer's disease. So instead of, if you think of Alzheimer's as like a kind of a gradual decline, starting those medications can kind of cut it off and kind of make it a little bit of a gentler slope. And like I say, nothing will stop it, unfortunately, but those will kind of slow the progression. And some people experience improved memory with some of those as well.
So it is, as you said, it's a progression. Is there any typical progression? Like if there is early onset Alzheimer's. So some people are diagnosed in their 40s and 50s, but typically you said 85 is where it goes faster.
Yeah, 65 is, after the age of 65 is where you have regular onset Alzheimer's disease. So anything before the age of 65 is considered early onset, which usually progresses a little bit faster than regular Alzheimer's.
Is there a typical time that people have that, or just depends? Probably is dependent on what their general health is and all of that as well.
It's a little bit tricky because what they will tell you is 8 to 11 years is about the normal span, but that also depends on how healthy the individual was before they got Alzheimer's. What else they might have going on, if they then have strokes or if they have heart disease, something like that, that can accelerate the process. And the other thing too is that we do see a lot of people who have Alzheimer's disease well before they're diagnosed. And so retroactively, well, this person only had it for 5 years, but they've been dealing with it for 15 because the first 10 years were either the person living with them was helping them or something of that nature.
Okay. So, and I'm sure let's go into the services that you offer. So for family members or caregivers, let's talk a little bit about the services that you offer for them, and then what do you offer for the patient himself or herself?
Sure. Primarily what we do is work with caregivers, just because there are some services in the area that do a great job of doing case management with people living with dementia or Alzheimer's disease. So a lot of what we do is geared towards the caregivers. And we have educational programs in the area that are totally free for the caregivers to come and visit. Any time we ask that you register by calling our 800 number, which is the 800-272-30, sorry, now I messed up my number, 3900. And calling in that, also on that service, they'll actually tell you what programs we're hosting at the time. We also, and those are range from anything from communications to behaviors to just the basics of Alzheimer's disease and what you're going to be dealing with. And then we also offer support groups in all of those counties with the exception of Lake currently. And in Muskegon County, that is the first Thursday of the month, held at the Memory Clinic, and that starts at 1 p.m. and goes until 2:30. Okay. And so caregivers are welcome to come to that and talk with other caregivers about their strategies, struggles, anything like that. We also, by using that same 800 number, people can contact myself, and we can talk about making a care plan for them, or if they have difficult questions, if they have a difficult situation where somebody's still driving, for example, and they need to know how to get around that, or what it looks like and what the steps you would take to get somebody from home placed in a facility, or how do I find a good facility. They can call the 1-800-272-3900, excuse me, and talk with me about that, and we can sit down and make a care plan and figure out where we're going to go and what their needs might be and that sort of thing as well.
So you've got a support group for those who are dealing with that, and I think I went to one of those one time to talk. You've got a wide range of people probably who are new to being caregivers and people who've been with it for a while. I would imagine that's going to be a huge benefit, especially for people who are new. A benefit at the same time, maybe a little scary, because you're seeing what is to come, maybe, but I still think that would be, to me, reassuring to know that there are people I could talk to who've been in my shoes.
I think it's both. We've had several, over the last few months in the Muskegon area especially, we've had several new people come, and they came in and said, I don't know what I'm here for, but I need some support. And the group is very welcoming to them, and it's very open, and, well, this is what I did when my mom did this, or this is what I did when my spouse did X, Y, and Z. And so they're able to talk through a lot of things that I, as an employee, don't even necessarily know, because I haven't had to troubleshoot that in my own home. And so it is a very welcoming, very helpful environment to talk with other people in that same predicament who have been there and done it.
And they're not required to share. They could come and just listen, probably.
Yep, they get. Typically speaking, we ask for a name and then that kind of thing too, and then but the group itself kind of flows back and forth, and some people share more than other people, and depends on the week sometimes if you're going to want to share or not.
Now, as I recall, you have monthly counseling at Tanglewood Park, where we're located. When is that?
That's on the third Tuesday of the month from 9 a.m. till 12 noon.
Is that a one-on-one with you? Do
Yes.
people need to make appointments for that, or is it kind of a drop-in? They come and see you?
It can be both. It's ideal if you make an appointment, because that way we can talk about what it is that you might be asking. So I can bring additional resources. So I always have a certain amount of the basic things with me. But if, say, you needed help with services in Newaygo or something like that, where I'm not as familiar with all of the resources off the top of my head, I can print all of the information and bring it with me, and we can go over specific questions that you have.
So it just makes better use of the person's time to give you a little clue of what they're looking for.
Yeah, and certainly drop-bys are welcome as well.
Right. And do we still have a caregiver support group at Tanglewood Park?
Not that I'm aware of. Not that's sponsored by us, but I know
so it's
that
probably gone to the one that you have.
Yeah, I believe so.
So let's talk about something important coming up on September 24th, the Walk to End Alzheimer's. So you mentioned that these groups are free, and which is wonderful. Obviously, you have to get money somehow to run these, to do your services and all of that. This is one of those ways, the Walk to End Alzheimer's. So tell me a little bit about that. How long has it been going in Muskegon? I know we have them throughout the region. There's one right away in a matter of days from when we're taping this in Ludington. I know they pretty much happen during the month of September across the state, it seems like, from what I've seen.
We usually start, we have a few outliers in August and some in October for our chapter. We have 4 different regional offices that host them at different times. And we've been doing them for 12 years now. It used to be called the Walk to Remember, and now it's just called the Walk to End Alzheimer's. This year we're going to, well, we're hoping to hit 400 participants in Muskegon. We were halfway there with our team retention rates. We've already got 52 teams coming back this year.
I know ours is one of them.
Which is,
and Senior Resources has one, and Light Circles in our building, Tanglewood also has one.
Yeah, and that's very exciting, and we're very, very happy to have it. Last year we raised over $50,000.
Wow, in one day.
Yep, with about 300 participants, and that's in Muskegon area alone. And then the great thing about that, because I get a lot of questions about where does that money go? You're a national chapter, that goes to national. What actually the breakdown looks like is that 78% of the money we take in the Muskegon Walk, and also in the Ludington Walk or any regional walks, but for Muskegon and Ludington, will stay in that community and in advocacy, research policies and programs, doing what I do, and one-on-one care consultations, in awareness and that sort of thing. So that comes right back to the community.
Wonderful.
And only actually 16% goes to fundraising, and then I believe the remaining 6, if my math is right, goes to like actually administrative stuff. So it's a very huge payback right back into this community.
Great.
Yeah.
Perfect. So you already talked about how many walkers we usually have. How, and this is held at Heritage Landing in Muskegon on Saturday, September 24th. How do people register? Can they still register?
Yes, they can actually come in the day of if they would like to. It would be ideal to have you register ahead of time because it saves them time in the line, and it saves them time too, because the process, you would come in at 9:30, which is when our registration starts on the 24th, right down at Heritage Landing, like you mentioned. And they would come up and they would check in, and then they'll get, they'll turn any monies that they have or any checks or anything like that, and then if they raise $100, they get a T-shirt. $500, and they're a grand champion, so they get a medal as well as a T-shirt, and they bring the cowbell and bring everybody around. And then the walk route itself is about 2 miles. And you want the registration for that, the easiest way to register is to go to act.alz.org/Muskegon. And that will take you right to the Muskegon walk page. And you can either join a team that's already existing, or if you know somebody who's walking and you guys want to start a team, you can do that too, or you can join as a single walker. And just register right there, right online. And that was act.alz.org/Muskegon, because I tripped the first time I said that. So
it's always good to repeat.
Yes, and it's a pretty easy website, and if you have any further questions, you can contact us via the 800 number, which is the 800-272-3900, and ask for myself or Elizabeth Johnson, who's the walk manager, and we can get you registered too for troubleshooting issues.
So are most of your walkers people who have a loved one with Alzheimer's, or have a passion for it, or is it really a mix?
It's really a mix. We do get some teams that are, a lot of teams, they're family and friend teams, so it's, we knew somebody or grandma or grandpa has it and they touched too many lives, or sometimes we get people who are caregivers professionally, where they're, say Comfort Keepers is going to have a team. So these are people who work with people with Alzheimer's or dementia, or their family, and they come in and they take care of people, and they want to do something to kind of support that mission and further that along. And so it's an interesting mix of people. So that's really exciting, and we'll hope for really great weather for that. And do you know, so you said you raised about $50,000. Do you have any idea how much you've raised over the 12 years you've done it? I do not know about the 12 years. I know this year our goal is $56,000, and we're, I think, 34% of the way there as of this morning. So we're looking forward to doing our part and just blowing our goal out of the water like we did last year. Well, people should definitely get out and do that. Or if you can't walk, support somebody who is. I'm sure there's a lot of people and we have people that come down and just kind of hang out the day of too, and it's a very fun, it's a very festive atmosphere. There's, we do like a warm up, and we're going to have, just kind of a really great, it's a great environment and a great energy to be around people who care about ending Alzheimer's. So they start registering at 9:30. Is the walk really at 10 then? Or? The walk usually starts right around that time. Sometimes we have like a little bit of a warm up. Usually somebody will donate their time and come out. A fitness person will come out and we'll do a warm up, and then we'll all kind of proceed out, because you also get a memory garden flower too, which is kind of nice, and we have 4 different colors. Blue is if you're living with Alzheimer's disease. Purple is if you lost someone for Alzheimer's disease. Yellow is if you have a loved one currently fighting Alzheimer's. And orange is if you support the mission. And you get one of each of those, and they're little windmill flowers. And so you get to do a little decorating on it, and then we kind of we plant them for the opening ceremony in the hills there. And so it's kind of nice to see. Yeah, and then we do a little opening ceremony, and everybody takes off and then we're going to walk up around downtown Muskegon, actually, right by Western Avenue and by Hackley Park and that sort of thing.
So 2 miles, not too much. Just depends on how long it takes somebody, but probably you're done around 11:30, so you still got the rest of your day. Go hit the farmer's market, get those healthy foods to keep your brain going.
Yes, exactly.
So let's talk about another thing, Sarah, that you had recently. You had an Alzheimer's research night in August that was held at Tanglewood Park. That was the first time I had gone to it. I know you have it every year, and you had a great speaker who shared in very common language what was going on in Alzheimer's. What do you hope? We had, how many people did we have there?
We had about 85.
80? And so it was a good.
Yes.
And it was the first time we'd had it at Tanglewood. It's been at the community college before. What do you hope that people take away from that event?
I struggle with just having one hope that people take away from that event.
What are your hopes?
I really, really hope that people come to that event and they understand that we're working towards a cure, because so frequently I can't give the answers for that, and there aren't any really good answers, and there's not, if you do this and this and this, we can stave it off. So what I hope is that they're taking away that there is hope, that we are working tirelessly to find. Those researchers are working all the time, all over the place, just trying to find. There are people out there who are, like our speaker, Dr. Bruno Giordani, who are working with that, all the dementias, and trying to figure out how we crack this. And also that they're not alone in their questions, too, because Alzheimer's is a very isolating disease. It's, I mean, it really, friends leave, they don't know how to deal with it, the families pull away from other people. And I hope that they take that away, too, that there is help out there, and they can contact us or anybody in the area. They need to reach out, and they will be received, and they will be helped.
What is there another way that people can help? This is going to be dangerously political. Is there funding coming from the federal government for Alzheimer's? Does there need to be more? I'm sure that answer is yes. Can people, should they be calling their lawmaker, their representatives, their senators to urge more funding for that? Is there something that they can be helping? Because this is a huge, huge issue. And you kind of, I think about Parkinson's and how much more attention that got when Michael J. Fox developed that, and Muhammad Ali. And we know that President Reagan was diagnosed with it. We didn't know it when he was in office, and we're going to run out of time. But is that something they should do? We should urge our
absolutely
viewers. Become
an advocate. There are, if you go to alz.org, there are tons of ways to look on Become an Advocate. Call your congressman, call your representatives. We did see just recently the HOPE Act is going to increase some funding for us, and we're hoping to get some funding for caregivers too, because this disease is going to bankrupt Medicaid and Medicare, and it's it's the difference between people being able to eat and not eat.
Great. Well, I know we're down to just our last few seconds, so I want to remind our viewers how to contact you for more information. So they can go to your website, www.alz.org or .org. Your 800 number, 1-800-272-3900. If you can't remember either of those, call 211 and say, I need to reach the Alzheimer's Association, and they'll give you that contact information. So thank you, Sarah, for being with so much. We could talk for another half an hour about this, because there's so much. I'd love to hear more stories. We'll have to have you on again to talk about that.
Certainly.
Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.